Welcome back to the EdexLive Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by Jennifer Sait, Director of Learning and Development at Kai Early Years and Kai Circle, and Director of Academics at Legacy School, Bengaluru. With nearly 2 decades of experience in international education leadership and teacher development, Jennifer brings both professional expertise and personal insight as a parent into how meaningful education can be reimagined. In this conversation, she reflects on her journey, the values that shape her philosophy, and how schools and parents can and should work together to nurture well-rounded, curious learners.
Jennifer, it's wonderful to have you here. Let's dive straight in. What's one teaching practice or mindset you believe genuinely transforms a student's learning experience?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk about the passion and what we do every day. With regards to teachers, your question was to teachers, right? I think that what we really look for when we're hiring especially is one critical factor, and that is to have a growth mindset. If teachers do not have a growth mindset, that's when you tend to see stagnancy within classrooms. I think it's really important that we are looking continuously at what the future is for the children that we have in our classrooms today, and to be able to understand that we continue to evolve as practitioners and continue to learn and go through different professional development opportunities. And so that growth mindedness needs to be there with every teacher.
How do you balance empathy with structure, especially in international or high-demand school settings?
Structure and empathy, that's a great question because it is a challenge. And with regards to structure, I think that that's something that everyone in the organization needs to understand. What is structure? What does it look like? When it comes down to why do we need to have structure? The why is always something that we focus on. So whether that structure comes down to, say, the systems and processes in an organization, the different policies that are there, the documentation, why are those important? And why do we need to be adhering to those? When we're looking at, say, empathy, right? When you have a policy, for example, how do we then balance, say, different situations or contexts with empathy if we understand that there's maybe a challenge with being able to implement that policy, or there's a challenge that's come up in some way, let's say, with a teacher, with the teacher handbook, let's say. So I think that it's really important that we have a really robust culture in terms of being able to have an open dialogue, and it really comes around to building culture. So that is something that is really important for us to build very intentionally. It's probably one of our key focus areas, is to make sure that culture is the core of what we do, that everyone in the organization feels part of what we say is actually a family. They are part of our Kai family. And so from that context, what does that look like for them? There's an open door policy. There's a way that I can come in and have conversations with leadership, challenges that I'm facing. If I don't understand an aspect of structure, can I come to you? So it's looking at different situations and contexts and seeing people for who they are, and building culture around that, and a lot of understanding of why we do things. So that brings the aspects of the balance of structure and empathy.
Right. So it's not rigid in that sense.
Correct. Adhere to policies, we adhere to systems and processes, but we're also constantly, it's not that once one thing is set, that it's always final. We're always looking at how do we need to maybe adapt those systems and processes or adapt those policies, because we understand that there's always going to be a new situation, a new context.
Right. So you worked across global and Indian classrooms. What's one international practice that you have adapted here? And what Indian practice would you say should be on the global landscape?
Great question. With regards to the international aspect, I think that one thing that I immediately saw when I had first kind of come into the leadership realm in an international setting or Indian setting is the need for teachers to understand why they're doing something. And so there's an understood purpose to what we're doing, and that builds then the structure around why we're doing what we're doing. With the Indian aspect, one thing that I just love about Indian educators is that they are so innovative. You can really have no resources almost, and an Indian educator will be able to come up with some plan or some activity for children. And I think that that's such an amazing talent to have. Even for kids, I think that that's one thing that I really admire about children in this country, that even if you're just given a stick, they will come up with some way to make fun with that stick, to have a great time with it, to come up with it in a game. But you won't see that necessarily in all Western cultures, where they have maybe more materials, more options of things, and that creativity level is not necessarily as widely seen as what I see in India.
As a parent yourself and a teacher, an educator rather, what advice would you give to parents who struggle to let their kids fail, to experiment, to fall? What would be your advice to them?
So let me clarify. When you say fail, failing in what way?
An expected task, a task that's been assigned to them, perhaps?
Okay. So in that context, I would say, first, as a parent, let's reflect on ourselves. We've all had times that we have failed, right? We can all think of something that we regret or that we didn't do well at, or we can maybe think back to even our own schooling days of, when you got a grade that you didn't expect, whatever the situation may be. And did you learn from that? Or did you try harder the next time? Did you do something different? There would have been growth for yourself, I'm sure. And so to be able to have that understanding yourself as a parent, we can then help them see that in a child, that often failure is the best way that we learn, right? And so it is okay to let our children fail at something, but what do we do next about that? Do we just let them fail and that's the end of the conversation? No. What is the reflection stage then after that? How do we have a conversation with the child to help them? First of all, it's okay, but what can we have done better? And how do we facilitate that conversation?
I see. Let them not feel bad. So I was listening to Dr. Swati talk about the self-esteem and how being rebuked or chastised for an attempt can impact their neurochemistry in ways that might be irreversible to an extent. What does healthy parental involvement look like in the early years of a child's development?
Healthy parental involvement, the first thing is connection with your child. And for that, everything is around relationships for a child, right? When they're first born, it's a relationship with their parents, right? When they go into school for their first time in school, it's building a relationship and comfort with their teachers. So we really want to make sure that we understand that as a parent, we want to build strong, healthy relationships around our children. How do we build social skills, say, for our children? Again, that comes down to building relationships with other children, right? So that's one thing that parents can do. To be really involved as a parent, it's also being able to be aware of this time in a child's life. So depending on whatever age your child is, and whatever milestones they should be reaching, to be well informed of that. What can you do? So reading different parenting books, or listening to podcasts, whatever that might be, even in small chunks. It doesn't have to be anything major, but at least trying to be aware that, this is something that I should know in terms of my child's development, what my child is going through. What are the little tips and things that I can do to be a mindful parent and a conscious parent? There's a wonderful book, actually, that I just completed reading, which is by Dr. Shefali, who's a parenting expert, in fact. And she talks about also the ego of a parent and the inner child of a parent. And there's so many ways that we parent our children, because parenting doesn't come ultimately with a guidebook, right? You're handed your baby in the hospital and you're sent home with your child, but there's no manual, there's nothing, right? So how do you begin to do that? And she talks a lot about in terms of when children then are being raised, they're being raised by their parents and from however they were raised, or the opposite of maybe when they were raised, because they look at what they did not enjoy, say, from their childhood. So it's being able to be aware of things like that, being a conscious parent, being an involved parent, being connected with your child. And definitely when it comes to the schooling aspect, you need to, of course, be aware in conversation with the school, build a relationship with the teachers, build a relationship with the staff there, to be able to be aware of what is happening, how you can support your child. And teachers are always eager to give different ideas and tips to parents. They may not always feel comfortable to do so. So it's great for parents to ask, right? And to build that relationship with the teachers too.
Right. So it starts with, to me, it seems like accepting the fact that it's not just the child who's developing, it's the parent too. There's an educational curve for the parent as well. And the sooner they're aware of it, the sooner they function toward that goal of developing oneself, they'll be able to help the child develop better.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that at Kai Early Years we're really particular about, is in terms of being able to help and support parents to really understand what is this time in their child's life, how is their child developing, and to be able to understand also what are the practices going on in the classroom. Is my child just playing, right? But they're actually learning through play. What does that look like? So we actually do different parenting workshops. We actually have them come in also and experience a lesson so they can see for themselves how a child is learning through play. So being involved, attending those is also important. I understand parents have very busy schedules these days, and it may not be possible to always do that, but try to make those attempts to go in for those different workshops that the schools have and to be part of your child's learning journey.
When you watch your own child learn, is there anything that you notice that other parents might not, given your positioning, your experience in this field as an educator? Is there anything that you notice that other parents might not when it comes to your child in a learning environment, more specifically?
So I love this question. It's a very deeply personal one. With regards to my children, and especially with my spouse being in the same field, where everything we do is together in education. So given our current circumstance, we are always analyzing our children.
I see.
We very much are. I mean, we look at everything very holistically. So if I'm watching my child, let's say in a, just playtime at home with the neighbors, I'll be looking at their social skills. How are they interacting? If there's an argument, in the community amongst the children, how did they handle that? I'll be going into a reflection conversation with them, looking at, trying to understand different people's perspectives and what could I maybe have done better or done differently and what caused maybe this reaction. So we really do analyze. Sometimes we have to analyze ourselves too and say we shouldn't be analyzing so much.
That was going to be my follow-up question. How do you know when to pull back?
Right. And that is a challenge. I think though a lot of times, sometimes we just say, let's just be. Let's just be with our child. And I think one thing that we, are conscious of, coming back to the conscious parenting, you just have to build that relationship with your child, right? So sometimes we just say, look, this is just playtime. And this is just time for us to just bond with our child and see what they want to do. Let's not analyze, but let's just have fun, right? So we create those spaces for us to go and do a nice family activity. My boys are particularly really big into fishing. And so we go fishing very often. In fact, my husband just took the boys yesterday to 3 different fishing locations and they really enjoyed it. So we're always trying to look at different opportunities for them. But at the same time, we'll look at, what is it that maybe we can expose them to that they don't have opportunities for, because we're looking at the holistic development. So we are trying to balance that aspect of not overanalyzing too much, but we are very mindful just given our backgrounds. When I say also the personal aspect coming to schooling from my older child, it was definitely an experience, I think, because he had quite a few transitions between schools for some time. And what we saw that there was something that wasn't quite right in his academics, and there were some inconsistencies. So it was really only a lot of conversation with teachers and a lot of collaboration between us as parents and teachers, that relationship building that I spoke about, that we were able to identify actually that he has ADD. And so that is something that we were happy to be able to discover, and we're working so well with the teachers to be able to, come up with, ways to be able to support him. And we see him now thriving and being able to pick up on things. But it was only because I think that I had that background as an educator that I was able to pick up on those very subtle aspects because it wasn't necessarily seen through the school system where he is currently at.
Right. So you would say that proactivity is crucial. You have to be very mindful and actively think about the development of the child and look out for these things, is what you're suggesting? Is that how important is that? Because some parents, to put it a little conversationally, kind of just go with the flow. Right? They just let it happen. There are established processes, established structures. In terms of structure, they think they are putting their child into a structured environment when they put them in a school. So, how does a parent know when to pay more attention?
That's a wonderful question. When we're looking at, so there are different types of parents, right? And like you said, there may be one, I've placed my child in a really great school and things must be going well. There's a structure, there's a curriculum, the teachers are there, they're supporting them. I'll attend the PTMs, and if there's anything major, I'm sure it'll come back. But what do I look for, right? They're not aware of what they should be looking for. And I think that, like I said, by having conversation and dialogue with the teachers in terms of what is happening, setting context for the teachers is very helpful. So that's one thing something that I've done as a parent is in terms of being able to set context for my child's teachers. What is happening at home? What is their personality like? What are their interests in? That supports differentiation in the classroom as well. What motivates my child, right? Those are things that parents can do to support that relationship between home and school. So by setting that other context, because teachers they do have curriculum, they have routine, they are, being able to observe your child and being able to support in many ways, but they will never have the entire context of your child. What happens at home, right? What environment are they coming from? What background are they coming from? What language are they speaking at home? Those are all factors that need to be considered within the classroom environment as well. So I think communication is a really important aspect. That's what you can do as a parent. Communicate to your teachers and let them know what is the context at home, what's happening. If your child, let's say, had a really bad day or really bad start in the morning, just sending an email and saying, please provide some extra, TLC to my child is something that would go actually a long way, because unless your child is emotionally ready also when they enter the school day, then they're not ready to learn, right? Because their mind is somewhere else, something's bothering them. So even a small thing like that, parents can do.
Would you say that some parents are instinctively, quote unquote, instinctively better at parenting? In your experience, what have you seen? Is it something like some people are just naturally better at? Is it something that can be learned to be a better parent?
It can absolutely be learned. Absolutely. And I'm going to take this back to your first question about what do teachers need? Being growth-minded. And I think if parents are too, and you're willing to learn and you're willing to continue to educate yourself in small ways, doesn't have to be anything major, but if you're willing to do that, then that's, I think, very key. So instinct, I'm no expert, I would say, at being able to understand all parents and their backgrounds and contexts, but I would say that you do see different types of parents, and they all have their own reasons. They all have their own backgrounds and their own histories and contexts, but what can they do? They can be communicative and they can, be open to learning and understanding.
Would you say that you were always growth-minded? Is that something that changed in you as an adult, or?
I would say I've always been highly curious. So yes, there's a connection there. I've just always been a curious person myself and always been a person that's set high expectations for myself.
You mentioned Saad, co-founder, spouse. So are there any educational philosophies that differ between you and he, your approach to certain things, and how do you reconcile any differences that might arise?
Educational philosophies. I think we are very much on par with exactly what the philosophy is. When it comes to implementation, obviously we are different people. We have our own histories and way we've grown up, and we have different styles of working in some sense. But I have also seen how we've really blended together, working together for so long, and being on the same mission together and having this striving for the same vision. And so we really are very much aligned in philosophy.
Could you tell me a little bit about the birth of this vision and how it developed?
So with Kai Early Years, we were very excited. Saad had met actually a friend, and they were having a conversation one evening about preschools. And this is our other co-founder, Abhinav, and he had expressed, some ideas that he had with regards to how preschools could be better, and it's particularly in terms of space. And the conversation just kind of grew. When Saad and I had also looked at it in terms of vision, we said, what next? Because our other campus, Legacy, so Kai Early Years transitioned from Legacy Early Years. And we were also looking at then what next to give back to society, because we were looking at the 35-mile mark from Mrs. Preeti Sait, who's founder of Legacy School, and she's a Montessorian at heart. And so when we looked at this from the context of what can we do for this next phase of education, we were offering the Montessori program. We also understand that if Dr. Maria Montessori was here today, there probably would have been some level of evolvement in her approach, right? And when we look at the IB curriculum, we also look at the aspect in terms of being able to understand that that's what is needed for coming for the future. We need students then that are coming from a different global perspectives and different skill sets, building these skills, these attributes. So we looked at then in terms of what curriculum are we offering. That's where we came up with the dual curriculum that we wanted to offer here at Kai. So we offer both the Montessori and IB dual curriculum, which is unique. We're one of the only schools in the world that's actually offering this.
Sure.
In the world. I believe there's one other in the US that I've heard of. I'm not aware of any others. But from that context, we're really excited to be able to offer this. And apart from that, the vision, we really want it to be able to be a place for families. And I think that that's something that many people don't understand until they come to the campus, because we are here as a school and we are here to educate children. We are a preschool, right? But we are doing much more than that. The vision extends beyond to be able to support parents, to be able to support the community, to be able to build awareness of the importance of the early years. And we are trying to push boundaries in that. So that's why Kai Early Years was actually built as a flagship campus. First, we wanted to be able to just say, look, everyone, the early years is very important. There's a lot of emphasis on older grades, but this is the time where the child's brain is rapidly developing. 90% of the brain develops by age 5. And so this is the time that we should be looking at. So coming back to the vision, then we need to be able to support parents to understand how can you be a great parent, right? We are looking at educational programming for parents. We bring them in, different opportunities, not just for our Kai parents, but for anyone from the external community who'd like to come in and learn about, how to be a more effective parent, different workshops that we have, different topics. And then we have the community center then, which extends our vision. So a happy, healthy parent and one that has more time in this very busy lifestyle that we lead. How do we support these parents, right? And so that's where the community center comes into play. We have the Academy of Strength, which supports parents with their health and well-being. We have Paper and Pie, the cafe, which is there to support parents. Let's say even a mother who wants to rejoin the workforce after having a child. She wants to do something part-time, but she drops her child off to school and only has a couple of hours. What does she do? She can go over to Paper and Pie, even work out of there. We have a lot of parents actually that drop their children and then they work out of Paper and Pie for the day. And so we have Healthland, which has the pediatric center to make it convenient to be able to go to the pediatrics, dentistry for your child, and everything's all in one. So with Healthland, there's then the option for parents to be able to have the convenience to meet a pediatrician, to be able to get vaccines, dentistry done for their child. And also in case there's any emergencies, heaven forbid, at the school, we have accessible doctors right there on site. So this really an ecosystem that we've built here. Now extending it even further, we have now launched Kai Circle, which is our center for innovation, research, collaboration, leadership, and empowerment. And so given this vision that we have now is to extend even further, being able to support teachers outside of our community more with professional development, consistency and quality in terms of being able to up the level that teachers are being able to teach at. And we would like to also have an impact in terms of being able to support parents more widely, again, in the external community, to have different opportunities through events or through different, let's say, book clubs in the future. There's different aspects that we can bring in. So we're looking at being able to extend this far beyond just our Kai Early Years community.
I see. So then to close, is it more about letting the child be a child and just be in the moment and grow, quote unquote, naturally, as opposed to we accelerating that process, accelerating the development, fueling the growth into, let's say, an upstanding citizen is how most parents view it, right? Education and development. So what would you say education is more about? Is it about letting the child be themselves or preparing them to be an adult?
When a child is a child, the child needs to be a child. I will say that when we are educating a child, right, we do follow the child. And that's one thing that we say in Montessori, right? Follow the child. But what does that mean? Does that mean that we are not promoting their development and their development for the future? Yes, we are. But it's done intentionally in a way that we are allowing the child to be who they are. So we need to be mindful in terms of where the child is at. We need to know each child individually for who they are, what their level is, what their interests are, and we need to be able to reach their potential by knowing that. And so we are striving to be able to develop them, but within the reasonable bounds of them being a child, and to have connections and relationships first. Because when we look at the foundation and the brain development as well, there is so much that's being laid in this critical time period. It is not just an academic aspect, but it is all the skills, the self-esteem, the love for learning. All of these things are being. So their foundation for love for learning, self-esteem are all being laid now at this time. So we need to be very mindful of that. So let the child be a child, but know the child and help them reach their potential.
Right. Interact with the child. Have it be an interactive process instead of just us prescribing something. Have it be a mutual learning experience.
Yes. And I think actually you've picked up on a great point that I'd like to add there is we could also learn from a child. There is so much that we as adults, as educators, as parents, can learn from our children. And that's one thing about bringing it all back to being growth-minded. We're all learning, we're all developing, right? And I think that that's something that's really important as a takeaway.
If you had to give like a parting, if a parent watching this right now, if they had to have one takeaway, one important takeaway from this conversation, what would you have it be?
Connect with your child. Make eye contact with your child. Take interest in your child's interactions, their interests, and make sure you give time to your child.
Thank you so much for your time, for your insight. This has been very educational. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate it.
That was Jennifer Sait sharing her insights and experiences with such honesty and warmth. Her reflections remind us that education is not just about academics, but about nurturing empathy, resilience, and joy in our children. To our listeners, we hope this episode encourages you to rethink how learning can be more intentional and impactful in your own communities. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the EdexLive Podcast.